Beloved, I pray that in all respects you may prosper and be in good health, just as your soul prospers. 3 John 2. The purpose of this talk is to help self-ruled men rule financially well and win the world back. Considering all I've just covered, our situation of societal and financial breakdown requires real wisdom. Did the Lord say that we should be wise as doves? No. He instructed us to be both shrewd and innocent as we navigate a hostile world. This is no time to hide in our holy huddles, not being salt and light. How shall we then live? A quote from Francis Schaeffer. In that book, back in the 70s, he challenged people to live out their faith in practical ways. The shift away from a biblical foundation in all domains resulted in relativism, fragmentation of thought, even a sense of despair and alienation. We are living now in the ruins of civilization, building up from where he left off. He said to engage with the culture by offering reasoned responses to cultural challenges. We are going further than that, living out our beliefs fully in all areas of what it means to be human. Our local fellowships, churches, Christian groups can not only be right, but truly beautiful. The outworking of our beliefs makes a mark on society for better or worse. Let's do better, since God is the source for all that's good, true, and beautiful. How does this look in financial management? True success and flourishing depend on leaders ruling well. By what standard do they rule well? And which domains are they responsible for? I'll unpack this here. Stonewall Jackson said, "I've prayed this day would not come, but now that it has come, my advice is to draw the sword and throw away the scabbard." After the Mexican War, he was asked if he was ever afraid during fighting or when he single-handedly ran an artillery section as bullets ripped through his coat. His response was, "I was afraid the fire would not be hot enough for me to distinguish myself." Does that sound like safety first or being politically correct? Now, learning logic is essential for ruling well in finances. God created a world of order, logic, and predictability. Basic principles of logic can be learned, like the law of excluded middle, that there is no third option or middle ground between any statement and its negation, or the law of non-contradiction. Two opposite things cannot be true at the same time. These and other bedrock rules for rational thought help us spot inconsistencies and prevent being swayed by the many bad ideas around us. We can teach others logic, especially our kids. Logic helps people understand efficient financial growth of wealth when they see the small things have decades of effect. Let's teach our people to think in terms of decades and generations. Each of us is not only an individual at a point of time, but we are also part of families in a long line of history. Our options are affected by our ancestors' actions, and our actions will determine options available to our posterity. I will be talking about many solutions in financial do's and don'ts, and they won't all apply to everyone's situation. I love questions, so please write them down and bring them over to my booth where we can talk further. I also suggest you divide your note page between mindset and action changes. So we've messed up the proper order of loves and lost the old commitment to excellence that Christendom was known for. These crucial areas to change our thinking will help when we go to implement some of the hard changes in our actions. We want the best for our families and for our families that come after us, because the highest love goes to God that requires putting everything he loves and hates before our own preferences. It requires conforming our thinking to his. Changing our mindset from short-term to long-term thinking gives us strength to conquer short-term pain. An area of health, for example, which is also important in the Bible. You see positive changes in the relatively short time. In the area of money, you may not see positive effects right away. Improving your trajectory requires motivation and endurance. Even small adjustments will make enormous differences in 10 to 20 years at the end of your life and into the next generations. Wealth obtained hastily dwindles, but the one who gathers by labor increases it. Proverbs 13. Instead of minimizing our Christianity to the most essential gospel-centered truths, we want theological maximalism. This means taking all of God's word on its own terms, no embarrassing parts, and applies it robustly to the whole man and the whole community. There is a Christian way to think about and to do everything. It is our lifelong project to grow in this wisdom God has richly provided in the bottomless treasure of his word. Nick Murray has been an influential resource in my vocation. He has practical thoughts on both optimism and the opportunity called today. If we look up and out of our own life and take a look around, both backwards and forwards in time, we can see many reasons for optimism. Optimism is the only long-term realism and the only view of the future which squares with the record. Life expectancies, technology, improvements, geopolitics, and global resources, which are not a fixed pie or a zero-sum game, stock market history, the spread of the gospel of the kingdom, all of these show concrete reasons for hope on a long-term trajectory for growth. Today, with a capital T, is the only day we have, and the only day on which we must be totally responsible for our behavior. Not yesterday, not tomorrow. Any long-term goal accomplishment is too overwhelming. If we look at the long months and years, we must do hard work. Goals are attained by doing the right thing today. It is a common theme in the book of Deuteronomy, Joshua, and Hebrews. Reducing risks, reducing tasks to the smallest unit possible, making the whole goal more easily accomplished. God reminds us to recommit ourselves each day to obeying and trusting him. He uses the manna in the desert and the Sabbath as object lessons. Remember Christ saying not to worry about tomorrow. Any new habit can only be incorporated. Today is one day at a time. It is tempting to blame everything and everyone else for our money problems, but follow these series of statements that can help us start to take responsibility. If I can own the problem, I can own the solution. If I can own the problem, I can own the solution. I own the problem. I own the solution. I am the problem, and I am the solution. We fail or succeed at improvement because of our own beliefs and behaviors. It is a package deal. Keep learning from mistakes and proceed on. This empowers us towards becoming the solution. Authority flows to those who take responsibility. Now, in any undertaking, you can never have good, fast, and cheap. All three. There are inherent trade-offs. Likewise, in the area of managing our finances, simple advice tends to be poor quality. Good financial management is by nature not a simple subject. If you want to do it quick and cheap, you're not going to get good. If you compromise on good quality, you may risk pitfalls with long-term consequences like needless taxes, mistitling an asset, avoiding legal costs, no financial legacy, and many more. From not knowing the effects of financial moves To be good, you either hire someone or you spend a career's worth of time researching and practicing. Excellence comes through hiring people better than yourself. Realizing this starts with humility. I don't know it all. A man of understanding will acquire wise counsel, and without consultation, plans are frustrated, but with many counselors, they succeed. Proverbs 1:15. I have seen many avoidable mistakes made when folks are unwilling to hire good counsel. But the beauty is you can teach your kids, give them a head start, and they can give their kids an even further head start so it builds on its own over the generation. One extremely important concept to understand is what Einstein called the eighth wonder of the world, compound interest. It is either happening against you or for you. Your actions decide which. Like gravity, it's built in. You cannot avoid it. For a simple version of this, a famous radio talk show host recommends eliminating all debt except your house, even 0% interest debt. For some illogical reason, he believes house debt is biblically okay, but car debt is not. He advises a 15-year mortgage is honorable, but a 30-year is not. This is absurd. Think of it this way. If you have $1 or a gold coin or whatever currency sitting there not growing, you're losing the potential growth. Another term for compound growth is the time value of money. Or $1 today is worth more than $1 tomorrow. Let's compare how the wealthy think and act versus how the poor and middle class think and act. Poor people tend to spend every dollar they get, and their standard of living is determined by their credit cards instead of income. This is a generational poor mindset. The middle class burn income, develop a standard of living, and then possibly invest on the off chance there's anything left. The wealthy mindset is to invest first, and then your remaining income and assets determine your standard of living. This is possible even if you aren't wealthy yet. Those of wealthy mindset work hard to create assets with longevity, and they teach their kids to live on income from assets and create more of the same. On wonderful and rare occasions, I'm privileged to help families move from poor or middle-class mindset into a wealth-minded mindset. People with a poor mindset, no matter how much money they have, think they can't afford to care about things like leveraging tax advantages. They can't acknowledge they need anything but another handout. They refuse to do the hard work of focusing on the future. People with a wealth mindset hire subject matter experts to help them leverage advantages. They stop going further into debt. They look up and get help. They face reality, take responsibility where they can, and ask for help to learn what they don't know. They get help to take effective actions and know what difficult actions to prioritize. Now, everyone has pain, and you get to choose whether you pay pain now or in the future. If you choose now, you set your family up to reap rewards in the future. Yes, this requires hard work. It requires living well below your means. If you didn't get help from your parents, yes, it is difficult on your own to change your trajectory to this wealthy mindset. I have seen many a middle-class young adult thump their chest and say, I'm going to do it on my own. Or, when I achieve a certain level, then I will ask for help. My question for you to consider is, when do professionals hire coaches? When they achieve a certain level, or at the beginning? Do they ever achieve a level where they don't need a coach? No. The wealthy mindset trains their children from a young age in their family skill set, in the family generational businesses, in their wealth management. When young kids earn income from a job, a person with a poor mindset will let them spend it all. A person with a middle-class mindset will have them invest 10, 20, or 30%. A person with a wealthy mindset will teach them to invest 90% and enjoy the income from the asset. So teach your kids these principles from a young age. Teach by saying and by doing. If you have kids savings and investing, a time will come when they will ask you if you're doing it. And if you're not, they will stop. They will believe that since you don't save and invest, why should they? They'll go and burn their assets spending it like you do. Spending every dollar they take in causes unsustainable inflation at the family level. Those you lead will learn more from what you're doing than from what you're saying. Yes, this is hard. And if you're starting from a poverty position or with nothing passed down to you, but you must do everything you can to repair the damage we've inherited. To improve this trajectory, you can change your focus and live significantly below your income in order to buy assets. These take various forms, whether it be hard assets like a rental home or stock market assets or purchasing a portion of a company or starting your own business. All of these can be used and have different risks. None are without risk. I'm a big fan of having multiple types of assets wrapped in various tools like retirement accounts, life insurance policies, non-qualified accounts, small business ownership. All have pros and cons and work well when used together. Financial planning is dynamically different when you tackle it with generational thinking with a view to family lineage and inheritance for grandchildren. What tools to use depends on the goals and the long-term tax implications of your decisions today. Consider how to invest for maximum growth while protecting your flanks. This is a military strategy for battle success, and it is crucial for financial success. Many of the common contingency plans to plan for are loss of health, death, disability, tax volatility, accessibility of assets, economic regulation changes, and market crashes. A good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children in Proverbs 13. When we decide how money is placed and how it is invested, we consider at least 2 generations down from ourselves. Leaving a legacy for 2 generations cannot be done from an empty cup. Instead of focusing financial planning on how much to save for retirement and having enough till death, let your focus be on how to help your children and grandchildren, not just now, but also when. When in the lifetime of your children and grandchildren do they really need help? It is when they are young and married. By the time you die, they'll likely be in their retirement, and your inheritance to them will have little impact. Imagine the incredible benefit of providing the down payment on a home so they can own a home and stop throwing their money away in rent. What else can you do? You can protect their insurability at a young age. This is the right to have life insurance as an adult without medical questions. You can easily protect that right for a small amount when they're a kid for less than $100 a month. I'll expand on that in a moment. More than 250 verses of the Bible speak on inheritance. It includes physical possessions, house, land, wealth of our fathers, portions allotted of the promised land, and the boundaries of the nations, which is their property from God. Do you know that God gets an inheritance? It's his people. His dwelling on earth, his sanctuary, Jesus the Son inherits the nations and an excellent name. The Lord himself is our inheritance, the word of God, eternal life, salvation, the promises, the earth, and all things made new. This inheritance is imperishable and undefiled. By contrast, inheritance can be lost through disobedience. It's not blessed if it's gained hurriedly at the beginning. Rulers are not to take from the people's inheritance, and wicked tyrants receive misery and dissatisfaction as their inheritance. Wealth transfer shows up in a few more ways. The sinner's wealth is stored up for the righteous in Proverbs 13. The Lord will give what the wicked man accumulates to the righteous to use in Job 27. Wealth gained through excessive interest goes to those who are kind to the poor in Proverbs 28. And a sinner's task is to gather and accumulate for the benefit of those who please God in Ecclesiastes 2. Considering all of this, family leaders must lead in finances and wise planning. It's important to set good examples in all areas: worship, exercise, diet, health, work, hygiene, education, wisdom, etc. While we may delegate who does a specific task, family and business leaders bear the responsibility of making sure finances are done well. Good financial education is sorely needed. From simply how does a checking account work to, more importantly, compound interest, both positive and negative. Investments, insurance, taxes, etc. These things are vital for our young adults to know. They're getting married, having babies, starting family, and need a strong financial foundation. Helping the next generation launch well in what continuously drives me to share the wisdom of God has given to me in this crucial area of managing his world. We want them to fare better than the current one, and not for mere comfort, security, or consumption, but for the glory of God in the advancement of his kingdom of peace and joy on earth as it is in heaven. Now, the starting level of planning is catastrophic risk because life and health are not guaranteed. Our own poor choices can hurt us, and things outside of our control, like accidents, crimes, and medical problems, regulation changes, job changes, etc. The military calls this contingency planning. The starting point in catastrophic planning depends on where you are. A 20-year-old starting to plan is not the same as a 70-year-old. And while we may have made mistakes, don't dwell on them. Learn from your past and put your focus on the future. Catastrophic risk number 1, family death planning. We're all going to die. The question is, how organized will you be and how will you leave your family? Do you want to act multi-generationally and use the end of your life as a financial explosion event to positively affect your kids' kids? Using macro planning, 12 times your income is a rough starting point, but no one is average. A common mistake is to use the macro recommendations into the micro. They exist as a reference point, not to tailor your personal planning. 12 times is a starting point. You want enough life insurance based on what you want to have happen when you die, early or in an old age. Each family has a different amount of debt, taxes they pay, standard of living, number of kids, income abilities, etc., which affect needed coverage. I have worked through many death claims with many clients and have never had a surviving spouse say, "I wish my spouse would have purchased less life insurance. I'm so glad we saved those few dollars a month to get less life insurance." I have had many surviving spouses not be able to think clearly for a year or two. Unexpected expenses crop up beyond basic standard of living. Family members, instead of helping, reach out their hand out for some of the life insurance proceeds. Yes. They think the surviving spouse should automatically share the surplus like it's a huge windfall. Titling your life insurance beneficiaries correct can save legal pain. Again, there's not one perfect way to do this for all circumstances, but I see a common problem is not thinking through if parents die while kids are minors, what's going to happen with the money? The most common scenario left to default is that the kids will inherit when they're 18, although rarely is an 18-year-old mature enough to handle money wisely on their own. The two most common gaps I see in families of all sizes, whether they have millions in assets or not making ends meet, the two basic things lacking are 1, a weak and non-existent estate plan. This means a will and basic powers of attorney. And two, they are woefully underinsured, leaving them vulnerable to any eventual catastrophe. I am often told someone doesn't need their life insurance reviewed because they're set up well. When we get into it, though, they're surprised at the limitations of their current plan. For example, group life insurance is a very inexpensive way to get more death benefit, but you get what you pay for. Group life insurance only pays if you die while employed by that employer. Sudden death is rare, and statistically, more people get laid off after illness or injury because employers must find someone else to fill that role. And then you're no longer covered. If you depend on group life insurance, you won't feel the pain, but the legacy of poor planning will be felt by your family. The first document of a basic estate plan is a will. Most people make this expensive mistake of leaving control of their kids and assets to the state, simply by not spending a small amount of money to make a will, because all of you here do have a will. The question is, did you express your own desires, or did you default to the care of your family to the state? The second document of a basic estate plan is durable powers of attorney. A common misunderstanding is thinking if your spouse is incapacitated, your marriage license allows you to act on the behalf of your spouse. This is not true. A medical power of attorney is required to enact medically, and a financial power of attorney is required to enact financially. What about when your child turns 18? Before then, by law, you have powers of attorney on behalf of your minor child, but at 18, they're a legal adult, and you lose that protection. If they don't create a power of attorney and give that authority back to you, you cannot act on their behalf. So it is wise to get a POA, power of attorney, on your young adult and teach them when they get married to get this on each other. Life insurance is so complex that I have 3 postgraduate courses on this one subject. In this first level of planning, it's common for people to start with term insurance to cover their death benefit desires. A good strategy is choosing a company that gives options of converting that term to quality equity-based life insurance in future levels of planning. Catastrophic risk number 2. Health and disability planning. My philosophy on insurance is if something is catastrophic and likely to happen, you avoid it. Like chumming the water for the sharks, make sure they're hungry, and going in for a swim. For things that are not catastrophic, whether they're likely or not, use an emergency fund. By buying insurance for every little thing that can go wrong in life makes you insurance poor with little money left to invest. Now, for the things that are catastrophic but not likely, this is the category I suggest you buy insurance for. What are those things? Dying prematurely, being disabled for decades, going to the hospital and spending millions on medical costs. The costs of these insurances are minuscule and compared to the coverage because risks are not likely. However, your own probability is either a 1 or a 0. We don't know what that is because there is sin and pain in the world. And pain happens to people with good intentions. Life is pain. Anyone who tells you otherwise is selling something. So like the parable of the virgins with their oil lamps, it's important to have reserves for unexpected events. For disability, for those of working age, if you don't have your lifestyle covered by your assets, then it's vital to have long-term disability coverage. That popular radio talk show host in Franklin, Tennessee, has infused poverty-style thinking into the Christian community, convincing people to cancel life insurance and disability insurance as soon as they can self-fund. This is not what the wealthy do. The wealthy understand leveraging a small amount of money to protect large risks. They use it as a legacy protection tool so they don't spend their grandchildren's legacy on an unexpected catastrophe they've refused to prepare for. Let's not be penny wise and dollar foolish. We want legacy not to be an afterthought, but purposeful to make sure it happens. You can get partial long-term disability benefits from most employers. The most common coverage is group coverage, being 60% of your salary. Any bonuses, stock purchase rights, or other compensations are rarely covered. And with group policies, it's a taxable benefit to you when your employer pays for it. Most often, it's a fixed rate benefit with no inflation protection on the amount you receive. Inflation eats up the value and makes it a decreasing benefit. If you're on claim, most likely you're laid off from your job, and any other benefits like 401k match and health insurance subsidies are discontinued. Most group policies are called split definition, which means the first 2 years are own occupation and the easiest to qualify for. Starting in year 3, it's harder to qualify for that group benefit. This is rarely adequate coverage unless you have other sources of income to count on. Plenty of assets. It's common to purchase supplemental disability insurance that's attached to you rather than your employer. That way, it is portable, which means you can take it with you, and you can control if it's a tax-free benefit. You can control if it's an own definition and therefore easier to qualify for the life of the policy. And you can control if there's an increasing inflationary protection. There's much more to this, like if you have W-2 income, or you're starting your own business, or if you're changing industries, or if you have health issues. One example, if you own a small business and you and your wife have a health issue that makes it hard to qualify for individual coverage, you may be able to apply for a guaranteed issue group benefit. There are more considerations and multiple ways to get covered to protect your income. After addressing this basic level of financial planning to cover catastrophic risks, the next level is creating an emergency fund and working on debt efficiency. For most situations, I recommend building 3 months of your monthly expenditure amount of your family emergency fund, rather than 3 times your monthly income. Your stage of planning will determine where this amount is best held. For example, if you're just starting, consider a high interest rate savings account. There are many to choose from with current rates of 3.5% to 4%. I prefer people use an account that A, have a low minimum account balance requirement to maintain that interest rate, and B, they do not require you to move your direct deposit paycheck. Link your primary checking account so it's quick and easy to move money between them. Current technology for moving money between institutions takes an average of 2 full business days. It's best to keep at least 1 month of total expenditure in the checking account for low risk of overdraft. In the second stage of planning, you will also work on being efficient with your debt. I did an entire podcast on this subject on the Hard Man podcast in August of 2023. The summation is that there's 3 primary ways to attack debt. The snowball method, which is the most inefficient, and the debt avalanche method, which is more efficient by focusing on the highest interest rate to pay down debt first. And then there's the holistic method, which takes debt and assets as a big picture to determine which debt is most effective to pay down first. There are many levels of sophistication with this method. Once you have completed an emergency fund and are managing your debt well, we get to the fun stuff. The next level of good financial planning to start growing your wealth and helping your kids launch. Here you need to know what target you're trying to hit. Before you grow an asset, if you don't have a target, you're like a ship without a rudder. The wind and the waves will push you around and may shipwreck you. Some well-guided thought is important for developing goals with someone who's got experience in helping folks accomplish those goals. Otherwise, you'll miss problems which hinder your ability to accomplish what you want. One of the most misunderstood goals is retirement. The way I define retirement is the work you're doing no longer needs to yield an income. Work is good. And I believe we are to continue while we're alive on the earth. Once you've accumulated the assets to achieve your standard of living goals, your legacy goals, then earning an income from your labor becomes a choice. Some of my clients have achieved this and are still earning an income. One in particular, now that he has achieved his legacy and standard of living goals, said to me, he's an executive of an S&P 500 company, I can either give of my time to the church directly, or I can continue laboring in my field with my high income and give a lot of money away. So he chose the latter. I was speaking recently with another person who retired and is up in age. We discussed possible work. He and I was thinking, does his brain still work? Does his mouth still work? Yes. So instead of sitting at home watching Fox News, he could be engaging local politics, meeting local leaders, and influencing them for good, or be more active as a grandpa and grandma to support their kids, helping them improve themselves, their relationships, or their careers to positively influence your grandkids. What about mentoring young men and women in an area where you've been successful? There are all kinds of glorious ways to continually building productively, focused on truth, goodness, and beauty that you can do while you're retired. It requires a focus beyond yourself, beyond your death, to be willing to do this. If you're alive, God has work for you to do. Now, with a clear goal, your next determine your time frame and what is the cost in today's value to achieve it. How much money or size of income stream is required to achieve that goal in today's value? Then protect the flanks. Think about what might ruin your goal out of your control. This is contingency planning. Examples are tax volatility, inflation volatility, asset crash, regulation risk, economic risk, health risk. There are too numerous, but there are some big categories for you. You want to think through the best course of action if these happen. As an example, a stock market crash. What has happened in the past? What has worked during those times? How long do you need to be protected through it? This kind of risk is most important to cover during retirement when you don't have a working income to replace the loss. Some people tell me that catastrophes will not happen to them. And his example is losing your job, not being able to find a new one, and being forced to retire early. Young people say to me, I'll earn an income like I'm doing now until I'm dead. This rarely succeeds. A young man tends not to understand the physical pain and slowing down of an older man. Once you have contingencies planned for, next is how you want to decumulate your assets when it's time to use them. Decumulation is pulling value out of an asset. Most people assume that once they've reached retirement, they can coast. This is false. The decumulation period is when mistakes are most made. Like a mountain climber might spend all of their time strategizing how to get up the mountain, thinking that going down will be easy, but that is where most accidents happen. There are three main decumulation strategies for retirement. The first can be called the systematic method, sometimes called the 4% rule. Created by a financial planner in the 1990s, he analyzed 60 years of stock market data to determine how much could clients pull from their accounts and not run out of money for the next 30 years. The data at that time yielded 4%. Some planners still use this method, but it's from a time before widespread internet and increased market volatility today to mass individual emotional investors. This data has been rerun multiple times with significantly different results, some higher and some lower. So this method is typically used by clients who want simple and by basic financial planners. The next strategy is the dividends method, used a lot by boomers. This goal is to invest in dividend-paying assets, live only on the dividends. The two primary segments of the stock market are called value and growth. Value assets yield a higher dividend. Growth assets are focused on the price of the stock and typically yield no dividend. So if you focus your portfolio on dividend-paying assets, you miss a huge section of the entire stock market. And recently, growth has outpaced value for years. So this method violates a rule of diversification. Historical data in the stock market shows that portfolios that are not well diversified take longer to recover when the stock market crashes. It's not just lack of diversification, but also a misunderstanding of dividends versus growth. For example, a stock valued at $100 with a $2 dividend after payout of the dividend is now worth $98. And you will likely pay dividends tax on the $2 of dividends if it's in a non-qualified investment account. I would rather look at the total value, including growth and dividends. Let's compare a stock, one worth $100 with a $2 dividend, and stock B that grows from 100 to 105 without a dividend. I would rather have the one with the internal growth of $5 than the dividend of $2 and no growth. And potential dividends tax, which is commonly higher than long-term capital gains tax. And you can choose, if you have the growth stock, you can choose when to sell the stock so you are in control of the taxes. The third decumulation strategy is called the flooring method, sometimes called the essential versus discretionary method. This is most used by the middle class. What you do is you separate all your expenses into bills versus everything else, with the goal of the bills being covered by guaranteed income tools. Think pensions. The primary contingency worry for the middle class is outliving their money. They don't want to be forced to move into Section 8 housing or forced to move in with their family, but want to keep the options open. The benefit of this method is that their bills will always be paid regardless of how long they live. Now, when you know how you want to decumulate an asset, then you can work backwards to what you want to do today to hit that target. For example, if you plan on tithing while you're retired, there is a current strategy called a QCD, a qualified charitable distribution, that once you reach the age of 70 and a half, you can give to a charity from a traditional IRA tax-free. I speak to many folks who plan to do Roth conversions when they're old and to move all pre-tax money into a Roth and pay tax on it. This is even though they plan on tithing in their 70s and 80s. But this inefficient route wastes assets by paying unnecessary taxes. Instead, the goal should be reducing your taxes and keeping more assets. Pulling money out of a traditional IRA is normally taxable. A QCD is a smart way to avoid that. This is an opportunity to put money in tax-free, have it grow tax-deferred, and take it out tax-free. Instead of giving another after-tax asset as your tithe, you can plan to give an asset that has not been taxed. This allows more money to give and grow. Something else most people fail to strategize is when you contribute into a traditional IRA, the most opportunistic time is the highest income taxed years, commonly in your late 50s and early 60s, after all the kids are grown and you're at your peak income earning time. Now, growing your assets smartly requires multiple types of accounts working together. They all have pros and cons and working together well for your various needs and goals. In the third level of financial planning, while you're smartly and efficiently growing assets to meet your goals, you can work on plans to help launch your kids. Let's go over a few different tools to use while they're young, even starting soon after they're born, such as whole life, VULs, non-qualified accounts, Roth IRAs, 529s, etc. Equity-based life insurance on kids is a strategy multi-generational wealthy people use. It acts like a funding mechanism for future needs like college, buying businesses, houses, cars, paying for weddings. Their money grows in a tax-favored way while allowing for all of this. Whole life has a death benefit regardless of when someone dies. Its equity is guaranteed to grow. If you purchase it with a participating company, the dividends can be used to have it grow rapidly. I personally use mine to buy property and to take advantage of unique investment opportunities. Most insurance companies are not participating, so that their equity growth has historically been inferior to the few that still pay dividends. And within those, there is a vast difference in the amount that's paid. Caveat emptor. Is significant in which company you choose. Buyer beware. Another common tool is variable universal life. The VUL, the word variable, refers to sub-accounts invested in the stock market, and it means the equity position is not guaranteed. It goes up and down based on the internal sub-accounts you choose. One benefit is that it can be structured to allow irregular contributions. Think of Christmas and birthday presents from grandparents. Do your kids need more toys? Probably not. This is a glorious tool to add funds for their long-term benefit. Both tools are tax-favored in their growth and can be used to fund a variety of intermediate goals. No need to wait until retirement to use them. They are structured as life insurance, and so they provide that protection for the family. With some of them, you can include disability protection, meaning the insurance company pays the premium in case of a total disability after 6 months. The number one reason for bankruptcy is health issues. When people are disabled, they must cut expenses everywhere and commonly end up eliminating life insurance protection. Some policies have long-term care protection added to them. And for contingency planning and retirement, long-term care is one of the biggest ruiners of an estate if you're not prepared for it. I now use my whole life as my immediate emergency fund because I prefer it to grow faster than a savings account, and it grows tax-favored. These tools can provide lifelong insurance protection based on your current health, which is why it is a glorious tool to buy on a young, healthy child. Parents give them as gifts to their children when they deem their child is financially mature. Please hear a blessing in that the owner controls if and when the gift is made, unlike a UTMA called UTMA, which is a trust that must be transferred to the control of the child at the age of majority, which is commonly 21, even if the child is not mature. The UTMA is not tax-favored tool. The realized gain is taxed when it grows and taxed when you use it and has no life insurance protection. The 529 is the most common tool used to save for college, but it is focused on educational expenses. You can convert a small amount to a Roth IRA after 15 years with the same beneficiary titling. But if you like to keep your options open in case your child doesn't need the funds because of scholarships or grants, or they don't go to college, this is a poor choice of tools. Another problem with 529s that folks tend not to know about is if the child would have qualified for FAFSA financial aid, the 529 will reduce that potential aid because it's considered an accessible tool in the college payment system. Bonds are a poor growth asset for kids in contrast to stocks. Better to have stocks inside an account where the growth won't be taxed. Doing this in a tax-free growth strategy supercharges the growth of these assets down the road for their future. Now, if you're financially struggling and you have debt and you're not able to save for your children's children, you can still give them wisdom by teaching them about the debt you have acquired, how it was acquired, and how you plan to pay it off. Doing this when they're young will impress on them to make better decisions in their future. You can stop the cycle of generational debt if you teach them through your actions. Show them how to buy groceries, how to buy food, how it saves money. Have them pick out an item they would buy from the store and show them how to make it themselves. Sauerkraut is an interesting example because making it at home teaches trade-offs in the value of time and labor. Show them the cost of jars and the cost of the raw ingredients. Add that all up and go back to the grocery store. Show them that if they wanted to save the labor, what it would cost to buy there. These are wonderful life skills. Another tactic is the smart use of credit cards. A roughly 3% credit card fee is built into most discretionary things we buy already, like food and gas. So paying with cash or a check rarely avoids this. Using a credit card, though, does come with benefits you can redeem in points or cash back or miles, etc. The way to do this responsibly is to set up a statement balance auto payment on these cards. A statement balance payment drafts from your checking account whatever is due that month, so no interest is paid. That popular radio talk show host in Franklin, Tennessee, is adamantly against credit cards because of the tendency to spend more on a card instead of cash. For decades, with this overspending problem, we've coddled people by not teaching them self-control, and the church has not addressed it. Instead of eliminating credit cards, which fosters immaturity, teach them you're responsible for the need for wisdom and self-control, a fruit of the Spirit. Exceptions do not make the rule. Let's have self-control as leaders, and let's teach self-control, the financial self-control to spend less than we make. I hear too often from families that, it's just a small amount that I'm spending above what I make, or, it's just a small coffee, or, it's just a small eating out. Isn't this financial irresponsibility? We live in a wonderfully wealthy time, and these aren't necessities. Focus on your children's children and truly evaluate each spending opportunity. Does buying this pizza or fancy coffee keep me well within my available assets? Have I already taken care of the goals for my children's children? If not, forgo the pizza. Make food at home. Whenever your kids ask, why can't we go out to eat like our friends do? Use this as a teaching opportunity, because if you save money to help them when they're a young adult, but if you don't teach them, they will do so by what you're doing. This will only help one generation if you don't teach your kids why. Instill in your kids the passion for your family line in what you're doing so that this benefit of financial responsibility continues. Now, is this an expense problem, or is it an income problem? Let's acknowledge how important biblical ambition is and hard work. When a family is struggling for years to make ends meet, it's often more an income problem. The leader's responsibility is to provide well for his household. They can't be satisfied or complacent with 40 hours of work in a week, nor with making just enough to pay the bills for now. At the same time, it is a poor exchange if working more takes most of the time away from the family. A wonderful option is a family business. Working together, bringing income to the household together, your kids will benefit in so many ways. So, you've taken responsibility for covering your catastrophic risks and building your emergency fund. You've gotten out of debt, got control of your debt to work for you and not against you. And you've started to accumulate some assets as you strategize for retirement and legacy, the next level into sophisticated planning. Certain kinds of investments are restricted by the Securities Exchange Commission, requiring specific assets or income. These levels are called accredited investor, qualified client, qualified purchaser. These investments have unique liquidity risks, and so the SEC requires that you have enough wealth to wisely invest your money. The accredited investor is the easiest level to hit. For a married couple, it's one of two ways, primarily income of $300,000 for the past 2 years, and going to do it again, or a net worth of $1 million that doesn't include your primary home that you live in. These tools invest in what is called the private market. This is different from the New York Stock Exchange, which is the public market. One common tool that we like to use is called private debt. Debt is synonymous with bond. This is a bond in the private world. A sophisticated strategy we do for those with non-qualified investment accounts of at least $250,000 is to use it as collateral. Let me go back. You can use a non-qualified investment account as collateral for a line of credit. You're collaterally assigning this account to the bank in return for a loan. A common one we use has a current interest rate of 6.5%. This is low cost compared to the long-term growth of diversified stock assets. A common example in when someone sells their home, instead of doing a 1031 exchange of that value into a new home for a low house payment, they invest with us instead. They write off the interest on the home loan, and their loan payment comes out of their investment account gains. Another sophisticated way to use this non-qualified account is once you've held an asset for a year, you can give that asset, including its gain, to the church and not pay tax on the gain. You're using the growth of the stock market asset to pay your tithe. It's imperative that you talk with your tax advisor before making any moves. Now, implementing a comprehensive financial plan is not something that runs automatically. Some parts can be set up to run without much active management, but the whole plan requires years of tending and adjusting, very similar to a garden. This requires a commitment to excellence. Last year, in his talk about building Christian boroughs, Brian Sauvé described what we're collectively aiming for: to establish a broader culture of high achievement, a strong work ethic, pride of ownership. This is what built our country. The founding fathers saw a line from everything they did to the glory of God. They were so economically productive as they took a primitive land and turned it into our great country. When John Winthrop wrote, "We shall be a city upon a hill," this was not a vague reference to Christians everywhere. They knew this was to be true about themselves. We are called, just as they were, to rigorous obedience and fruitfulness by faith in the promises. Let us be marked by that same instinct. Put your back into what the Lord has put before you. Aspire to be the top 10% of whatever vocation you are in, whatever talents you have. Turn a profit with diligence. Pastors and their churches have an essential influence. Pastors are cultural battle commanders. Church leaders are to focus on ministering the word and prayer. To what end? To present every man mature and to equip the saints for the work of the ministry by teaching the whole counsel of God and its ramifications in every area of life. What is the work they are to be equipped for? Becoming disciples, making disciples, pushing Christ's dominion into every area, and passing the thick Christian culture down the line for our children's children to do the same. Christ's kingdom progresses and spreads throughout the world and into all areas of life. We're used to thinking missionaries and ministers are the pinnacle of spiritual occupation. But tradesmen, business owners, community leaders, artists, heads of families, academics, researchers, pastors, etc., no matter what honorable occupation is out there, it is a vector for disciple forming, dominion taking ministry. Church leaders are to know their people well and apply the truths of God in detail to everyday lives of those they're striving to present mature in Christ. Luther said, though we be active in the battle, but not fighting where the battle is hottest, we're a traitor to the cause. Now, the kingpin, most impactful thing you can do, the number one thing, I want you to take home from my talks, the thing that everyone can do to stop losing, regardless of socioeconomic status, is spend your money with the family of God. I cannot express how much impact this will have. Christians are funding their enemies. This is vastly more important than who you vote for. We should vote. I vote in every election on everything possible. And the bigger and more important vote is where your money is spent. If you have yet another Bible study and read 10 more books this year and have weekly gatherings in your home to discuss them, but you're agnostic as to how your money is spent that was given to you to steward, then the enemy giggles and rejoices over you. The Lord has given us a reprieve from the worst leadership we've had in a while. So let's not relax. Turn a profit on these easier conditions to take ground and don't let up. Many sermon applications have us resting in our position in Christ and stop there. Christians do rest in their salvation, and we work hard from that position in Christ to advance his rule and influence. We are to produce fruit in every area of life, and that includes our finances. There is a lack of realizing we are in a culture war. If a battle is won, it doesn't mean that the whole war is won. Will Christ and his culture be clear and prevalent in our culture? Or will we take our feet off the gas, letting the anti-Christian culture get reorganized to come back stronger than before? So, when you give your money, that you are to steward wisely. When you give these dollars to the enemy, they use our money to defeat us. This is the overarching concept I want you to always think about when you spend your money. How small? How are these dollars building the culture you want, or are they going to fight against our own desired culture? Network within your church members so that everyone knows what various professions and services are representative, and whenever possible, do business with each other. Think of ways you can send business from outsiders to those in your church. Work to establish owned space in your neighborhood or town. If possible, live near each other. This will facilitate cooperation, fellowship, and doing life together in so many practical ways. Who said, "Permit me to issue and control the money of a nation, and I care not who makes the laws"? Mayer Rothschild, the 18th century founder of the Rothschild banking dynasty. There is no neutrality. Nothing is outside God's authority to determine the value of a thing or idea. But our Christian community has been played, acting as if most of life is to be secular, as if what we do has no effect positively or negatively in honoring Christ. So our orthopraxy has not lined up with our orthodoxy. There is no areas of existence where we are free to think and do as we please, as if nothing has to do with our Christianity. The biggest impact that everyone has and can make is to intentionally decide with whom we spend our money. Christians have been funding our enemies for way too long. Let us rather fund our brothers. And above all, put on love, which binds everything together in perfect harmony. Colossians 3. Above all, keep loving one another earnestly, since love covers a multitude of sins in 1 Peter. Honor everyone. Love the brotherhood. Fear God. Honor the king. And be devoted to one another in brotherly love. Romans 12. Thank you.